The market hasn't closed yet, but Tesla stock is up today, and Ross Gerber now has Tesla stock as his #1 position in his ETF. And it doesn't seem like Ross wants to sell any Tesla stock. Ross was also on TV today together with the former CEO of Ford to discuss the latest deal between Ford and Tesla, where Ford EV owners can now charge at Tesla superchargers. Let's take a look.
Well, it's a bit surprising, but it's also very, very practical by the Ford team. I mean, they have these products in the marketplace. They have these products coming. And listen, the bottom line is they needed access, widespread access to superchargers. And with Tesla having the most superchargers out there, actually a 2-to-1 ratio over the other standard, it made it pretty simple for Ford to say, you know what, I'm not going to spend the time building the own network. Let's take advantage of the Tesla one. It has good reliability, good locations, and it takes one of the inhibitors or impediments away from customers as they think about EVs.
Here's what's crazy. It is really obvious how this deal benefits Ford, because a big sticking point until now for many potential Ford customers has been, if I buy a Ford EV, where do I charge? Because I've seen these videos on YouTube. If you want to charge it to Electrify America, a lot of the times it just doesn't work. So it's really obvious how this helps Ford. But here's what's crazy. Tesla stock is up just as much, 7.32% when I'm recording this. And the benefits to Tesla stock investors are less obvious.
I love it. I think it's just a wonderful move by Tesla, because you have to look at the business as different sections. And Tesla charging is one of the most important and valuable parts of Tesla today, because the network works so well compared to the competitors. So Ford is making a super smart move by plugging into the network. And for Tesla, they're going to get all this fee revenue from Ford users now joining the Tesla supercharging network, which I think will end up being very profitable for Tesla.
Even though at first the benefits from this deal are not exactly super clear to Tesla, I think there is no doubt that Tesla will make a lot of money from this deal, and there will be many more deals like this. If you are a Ford EV owner, you can now join a supercharging membership. It costs $12.99. Whether you sign up for it or not, you can still charge your EV at a Tesla supercharger, but the difference is you will pay a lower amount if you have this membership. Although, how much will that increase Tesla's valuation? Well, if let's say you take 100,000 Ford vehicles, that's about 15 million additional revenue if every single person signs up for supercharging memberships. If you had 1 million vehicles, that would be $150 million additional, and all of that pretty much would be profit. If you have 10 million vehicles in the US, competitors for GM, other brands, etc., that would then be about $1.5 billion a year in basically pure profit. And if you think that 10 million is not a very realistic number, well, in the US alone, there were 278 million registered vehicles in 2021. Just to be clear about today's stock movement of Tesla stock, I think it is mostly because the market is up just overall. Of course, I think investors, at least some investors, certainly like the deal as well, but I think it's mostly because the market overall is just doing well. That's why Tesla stock is up so much today.
I was going to say, Mark, what was in it for Elon? Is it about the fees, or is there something more to it? Because I can easily imagine a scenario in which they decided to have a walled garden and basically step on the throat of some of these legacy OEMs.
Well, listen, I think there's a number of advantages for Tesla. First off, it just reinforces that they're the leader in this space. When you have, a traditional automaker like Ford saying, I'm going to use their standard, and in their products coming in 2025, Ford's actually going to adopt their North American charging standard, which is a big deal. But secondly, they qualify now for the IRA funding from the government to help further build out their charging infrastructure. So again, they're getting federal assistance, if you will, to aid their business. And, I think one of the most ironic things is, prior to this, the traditional automakers were buying EV tax credits from Tesla. Well, now that's waning. Guess what? Now they're going to start to be able to gain some new revenues and profitability from providing, the charging stations. So I think it's there's a lot of advantages there. The only disadvantages is, listen, if you're in a Cybertruck and you're in a line behind a Ford F-150 or a Mach-E, that's going to be a bit of a problem.
One way that this is really good for Tesla is that the EV adoption rate in the US is really low for now. It's only at 5.8%. That's the number from 2022. And if you have more superchargers all over, of course it is going to be easier to sell more Teslas. That also means it's easier to sell other EVs, but when people look at which EV should I buy in the US, more than 50% of them say, we should buy a Tesla. In China and in Europe, these numbers are much smaller, but in the US, this strategy actually does make sense, especially because Tesla is getting funding from the government to build these superchargers. So it appears to me that Tesla can build more capacity than is needed just for Tesla vehicles alone. And if these stalls are left empty, they are not making money, while they could be making money if there's a Ford that's being charged or a GM vehicle being charged using a Tesla supercharger, which is good for Tesla shareholders.
Well, I think one of the things is that when they started the charging thing, they wanted to have one standard across the entire world. And a lot of people balked at Tesla's standard and didn't adopt it. So this is a reversal of something from many years ago that was ultimately probably a mistake for these companies. So Ford adopting it is really good. But what really is going to happen is the new model for Tesla charging are these massive charging areas like they put in Santa Monica with 150 stalls. So the worry about like Cybertrucks being behind Fords and all that, I think is legitimate, maybe short term, but longer term, there's going to be tons of charging stations. And so this is a win-win for the climate. It's for EVs, for Ford, for Tesla. And it will help mass adoption of EVs on a much greater scale. So, I'm very, very excited about this because ultimately our goal is to see EVs become a dominant, vehicle in the global, driving world, and so this is going to help a lot.
Here's another way to think about this. Let's say I am a loyal customer and I only buy Ford vehicles. And until now, charging has been a big issue for me, so I didn't really even consider buying a Ford EV. But now I'm considering, but of course, before actually buying a vehicle, I want to negotiate the price down, and I look at the Tesla and I'm like, forget about this loyalty, I am getting a Tesla for myself. This won't be happening with every purchase, of course, but in many cases, this will actually happen. I mean, Tesla in the US right now has over a 60% market share of all of the EVs.
Although it's also going to help the other guy. From a Tesla perspective, Ross, it helps Ford with its mass adoption of EVs and makes it easier for them at a time where we're wondering about Tesla's brand reputation and just what those price cuts mean.
Right. Well, Tesla's reputation is more related to Elon's personal political woes than the actual demand for the product, which people love. So really, people love Teslas and are still buying tons of Teslas. But, obviously, there's some dissonance there. But it's not really a competitor because, remember, Ford's competing against itself, selling a gas car versus an electric, let's say, F-150. And the electric F-150s are way better. So I don't think Ford owners want to buy a Tesla per se. So they're going to buy a Ford, and Ford needs to create, products for their customers who want EVs. And that's exactly what's happening. So there's no negative to Tesla by having more EVs on the road because it further increases adoption from the general public, which is still only buying, maybe 5 to 10% of the United States is buying EVs. And in California, it's now 20%. So if you extrapolate out, this is really good for both companies.
Because Tesla's market share in the US, when we look at EVs, is so high, I would generally say, in this case, I think it's more of a positive for Tesla than a negative. But if Tesla's market share was lower, I don't know. But for now, I think it is a positive. This will also make it harder for other competitors to build out their own supercharging stations because think about this. If I'm a Ford customer and I had a bad experience with an Electrify America supercharger and I go to a Tesla supercharger location and every time it just works perfectly. Every single time. Why would I ever go to an Electrify America supercharger, even if it's just a tiny little bit closer? But if I just drive for 1 more minute and I can get to a Tesla supercharger that I know for sure will actually work every single time, where am I going? I'm going to the Tesla supercharger. Therefore, Electrify America will either have to cut their prices or stop building new chargers perhaps, or build less, or maybe even close some existing ones eventually when it gets super competitive, unless they get their technology together and it actually starts working.
Mark, it makes you also wonder whether GM is going to make a move like this as well, and some of the others. Would that be beneficial to them?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, to the point with Ford and Tesla in this deal, I think it's a win-win for both, but a bigger win for Ford for the issues that we raised. I do think getting to this one standard is really important. You know, when you look back in the history, whether it's Betamax or VCR, or ironically, if you go back to the late 19th century, you know, the war of the currents, AC versus DC, which was around the electrical power transmission standards, Edison was pushing DC, and guess what? AC won out, and guess who was backing AC? Nikola Tesla. So, you know, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if some of the other automakers say, listen, we have these products coming. We need, you know, greater access to superchargers. And if they start jumping on this bandwagon, then I think you're going to see the industry potentially move over time in North America to one standard. And it quite possibly could be the Tesla North American standard.
Right. But would that be at the detriment of Tesla, Mark?
Well, I think at the end of the day, first off, as long as they keep bringing out compelling products, I think there's going to be demand. But this does add, this provides another, you know, revenue model for them. And, you know, the more that they can charge other OEMs for access to their systems and potentially a cut of the take of customers when they charge, I think that's going to be all incremental to them.
Yeah, overall, while I think this is generally beneficial to Tesla overall, I think it is more beneficial to Ford. It is a win-win, but Ford wins more here, I think. But if you look at Tesla's mission states that we want to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, and if we look at that, then it's a huge win for Tesla as well. But even financially, I think it is still a win for Tesla, just not as big of a win as it is for Ford. Either way, I'm a bit sad today because I was just about to buy more Tesla stock and now I have to pay a higher price. To all of Tesla shareholders today, I say congratulations. Nice. I'm very happy for you. And in this video, I talk more about Tesla starting to advertise. My name is Matt Post. Just like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.